The man I'm about to introduce is a political scientist by training. He is an expert in political institutions, as I learned when I interviewed him on my new podcast, Our American Discourse. I'm supposed to plug it, so go listen to it. But given his expertise, I just want to say a quick word about the institution that he represents before I introduce the man. I always tell people that there's never been a better time to be at the Price School. There's never been a better time to be at USC. The progress I've seen in only 3 years here far outpaces what I see in most of the country. And I know that's a trend that started long before I got here. And I've never been prouder to be at the Price School than I have been in the months since November's election. The message coming out of this institution has been swift and it has been resounding. We at the Price School stand for inclusion, for diversity, for equity, for fairness, and for justice. And no matter what is happening outside these walls, we will always be a champion for those values. That is the strength of good institutions. But that strength only holds force if the institution's leadership stands behind it. Our leadership, our dean, has voiced this message repeatedly and unwaveringly. I am proud to say that he truly has been leading from the West. Dean Jack Knott is one of the longest-serving deans here at USC, now in his third 5-year term. He holds the C. Irwin and Ione L. Piper Chair. Before coming to USC, he was the director of the Institute of Government and Public Affairs at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and Chicago. And before that, he was the chair of the Political Science Department at Michigan State University. He's a fellow of the National Academy of Public Administration and the author of 3 books and many leading journal articles. But most importantly, to me at least, he is passionate about good governance and tireless in trying to make government and society better. It is my firm belief that there has never been a more important time to do what we do and to be good at it. And this man, this role model of mine, is very good at it. Please join me in welcoming my friend, Dean Jack Knott.
Thank you very much, Anthony, and good evening, everyone. Now that you've heard a little bit about me, before we begin, I'd like to just say a couple words about the USC Saul Price School of Public Policy. And I'd really like to start with our mission. The mission of the school is to improve the quality of life for people and their communities here and abroad. And after reading the bios of our speakers tonight, it appears that we have the same mission as they do. So at the Price School, we achieve this mission primarily through education and research. We educate students to make a positive impact in society through innovative solutions to critical policy issues. We also believe it is our ethical responsibility to serve our local and global communities by conducting relevant research and sharing our findings, our data, and our expertise with them. One of the ways that we share this expertise is through the work of our research centers. The Price School currently has 11 research centers that cut across all the degree areas of the school. Our faculty study and work in the fields of environmental sustainability, healthcare, immigration, transportation, urban development, affordable housing, and governance. Now, governance is the focus of one of our most innovative and productive research centers, the Judith and John Bedrosian Center on Governance in the Public Enterprise. The Bedrosian Center's mission is to foster and promote governance as an essential tool for ensuring the betterment of communities. The center supports faculty through research grants and facilitates academic research opportunities for our students. The center has expanded the conversation on governance through research, scholarly discussion, innovative partnerships, and preeminent events such as this one tonight. These events could not come to fruition without a great staff. And so I want to thank Aubrey Hicks, the executive director of the center, and Ann Johnson and their terrific student workers. I'd like you to give applause to the wonderful staff at the Bedrosian Center. The center is known for its exciting and informative programs and its initiatives, including several popular podcasts and good governance talks. And it does this in collaboration with community and partners to encourage civic engagement. And I especially look forward to their next event, the Dennis Holt Lecture. It's going to be titled Journalism, Accountability, and Power. It's with Fred Ryan, the CEO of the Washington Post and founding CEO and president of Political. So please put that on your calendar. And I hope to see you back at Bovard on April 19th for that event. But for tonight, I have the pleasure to introduce your moderator and my colleague and friend, at least for a few more months, Dr. Raphael Bostic. Raphael came to the Price School in 2001, and he has been an esteemed and productive professor from the very start. He holds the John and Judith Bedrosian Chair in Governance. He is the chair of the Price School's Department of Governance Management and the Policy Process, and his scholarly works appear in leading journals and span many fields, including homeownership, housing, finance, neighborhood change, and the role of institutions in shaping policy effectiveness, in other words, governance. His expertise in housing led him to be the director of the USC Master of Real Estate Development program at the Price School, and he was the founding director of the Kasdan Real Estate Economics Forecast. Significantly, he spent 3 years in the Obama administration as the Assistant Secretary for Policy Development and Research at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And earlier this month, significantly, Dr. Bostic was named the new president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. Yes, please. This is a significant gain for the Federal Reserve, given his scholarly achievements, his administrative ability, and his broad-ranging expertise at a very significant time in monetary and economic policy in our country. But his appointment is not only impressive in that regard, but it's also history-making, as he will be the youngest and the first African American to serve in the Federal Reserve Bank president's position. So please join me in welcoming and congratulating Dr. Raphael Bostic.
Good evening, everyone. It's very nice to see you. Thank you, Jack, for such a kind introduction. It is really a pleasure to be here. It's always been a privilege to be part of the USC community, and tonight is going to be no exception. This is a program run by the Bedrosian Center that we call Leading from the West. And when I was in Washington, one thing that struck me was that when you're in DC, everything is about DC. Everything is about, all the good ideas come from DC, and if it's not DC, it's New York. Maybe when Obama's president, they'll look at Chicago a little bit. But the idea that there are interesting, innovative, and really transformative things that happen in the western part of this country is something that doesn't really occur in our policy space. And so I was really interested and energized to try to lift up some innovators in the public space that happen west of the Mississippi. And tonight we have two great innovators who are doing amazing things, Tara Roth and Roy Choi. You guys well, first, thank you for being here. It's really nice to have you with us. And for you guys, what we're going to do tonight is, oftentimes with these things, there's a speech, and then another speech, and then 3 questions, and we're done. We're going to try not to do that. We're going to try to have a conversation to talk through a number of the issues around governance, innovation, and in particular, the role that this innovation and technology has played in building communities that didn't exist before. Because both of you have been real trailblazers in that regard. Tara is the president of Goldhirsh Foundation and the founding COO of GOOD Magazine, which was really the beginning of this pathway. And Roy Choi, he is the creator of the Kogi truck, which transformed not only the food truck industry, but also street vending more generally. And I definitely want to get into that as well. So let me just start by asking a very simple question. Like, how did you get your idea? So Tara, maybe why don't you talk a little bit about sort of where you got the idea that we needed a good magazine and we needed to think differently about how we build community.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here tonight, especially with these two great gentlemen. We were starting to look at the kind of the landscape of what was happening, that Whole Foods had come to market, that people were exercising more positive action toward like a boycott, like actually purchasing with their ideals. And so there was something there that we said, what can we do to capitalize on this and make doing good being not a pejorative or something that's a little frumpy, but making it really kind of sassy and sexy and glamorous and hip, and sort of doing what Wired did for technology, what good could do for the whole like nonprofit and social impact space. So that's really where it came about. And then a lot of the values and ideals that came from GOOD have then since led into my work with the Goldhirsh Foundation in LA2050, and really putting more power to the people and community and letting the community voice what the community wants and then respond appropriately in a dynamic way.
So how did you know, like talk a little bit about how you thought that technology should play a role, that we should take the latest innovation and how people communicate with each other to advance the goals that you had?
So it was really out of necessity, which I think is probably something that we both share here, that we really needed to be, we were pretty scrappy. I mean, when I took over with the Goldhirsh Foundation and launching LA2050, I was one person, and then I got one more person on board. And so we thought about how do we actually build bigger capacity and build more outreach and more buy-in and get people mobilized to act. And that was, there we have technology, what a great answer and great solution. So it was really because there's just so much that one or two human beings can do. So for one thing, for example, we held 8 different events over the course of 3.5 weeks with a staff of 3 doing all of the hosting, and we reached 500 people with these great events. It was incredibly taxing. And then we opened the floodgates and did this crowdsourced grants challenge using technology, and we reached 80,000 people within the same amount of time. So it's astronomical what you can do with technology in the right way. You can also do terrible things with technology, but
it can definitely go both ways. I want to get to that in a second, but so you did the first 8 events. Mm-hmm. You have 500 people. Did you say at the end of the 8th event, I can't keep going like this? Like, are you would you say you're a technology expert?
No, I'm not a technology expert. I spent some time in the first Silicon Valley boom, so I recognize the importance and the role of technology, and what I look for is any relationship or tool at kind of the fringe to help further a social mission. So that's where I think technology can play a role, I think government can play a role, brands can play a role, design, storytelling. So it's whatever tools are available to us, but being in the mix of good, which is separate from the Goldhirsh Foundation, but being in the mix of good and seeing how people were using technology and design and narrative, and how that was grasping people and causing people to act, and in a positive way, then it was you can't ignore what's the possibility. So
now, Roy, I'm going to ask you the same question. Like, how did you get your idea? What made you think that you needed to take a different approach to getting food in front of people?
Mine was a little more simple. I was dead broke and out of a job, so. But, in hindsight now, I think everything in my life led to that moment. But, it was just a simple phone call from a guy I worked with back at the Beverly Hilton. And it literally, I was scared, because, your whole life you're building up towards everything. Kogi is a collaborative process. I get a lot of attention for it, but it's it was breaking the system and including everyone, not only the people who eat at Kogi, but the Kogi itself is a collaborative process. And so many times in our life, we're always pinned up to the challenge of it's, you know, you got to do it yourself. Everything relies on me. Everything, you know, you got to, even getting a job or holding a job, everything is about like your performance. But Kogi was more like a study group, I guess, you know. But I'd lost my job, you know, I was a grown-ass man, I lost my job, I couldn't get another job. This was when the economy broke. We spoke about the real estate situation earlier, but it was 2008. I was overqualified, overpaid for everything. I was even at the point where, I mean, I was literally like I felt like I was like 22 years old again, and I was going through classifieds, I was knocking on doors, it was like Benjamin Buttons of my career, man. I was like, I was going back and I was at the point where I was gonna apply for jobs at entry level again, you know, to be honest, you know. And then right at that moment, my friend called me and he's like, yo, I heard you lost your job. Fuck all that shit, man. Come meet me for some coffee. And then I met him for coffee and he told me the idea. You know, I was out at the club and, you know, all we got is bacon wrap hot dogs. Let's put Korean tacos out in front of the club. And that's how it started. And then from there, it opened up a whole floodgate of we started meeting his family. I brought a cook from my old restaurant on board, and we just started doing this thing. I started tapping into everything that I grew up with. We parceled out all the duties, and then I came up with the recipe of just cooking from my soul this taco that represented Koreatown, represented growing up here in Los Angeles. And I was just trying to capture like this feeling of all the things that I loved growing up that everyone told me was worthless, which was like hanging out in the parking lot, just like playing video games, seeing the sun go down, you know, all these things that I loved and I thought were valuable to me, like I guess the poetic nature of just living life, were always told to me that they were worthless and a waste of time. So when I tapped into that and made this taco, we all ate it and we were just possessed. Like we just looked at each other like, you know, we saw a ghost, to be honest. And we were possessed and we just went out to Hollywood and started selling tacos. And then one person on our team was connected with social media at that time, and then they said, look, here's Twitter, it's free, you know. And no one knew what Twitter was for at this time. I don't know how many of you are undergraduates, so you're probably, you know, at that time you were probably 13, 14 years old, maybe, if you're like a sophomore or junior right now. It's hard to believe that only 8 years ago, you know, 9 years ago, the iPhone just came out. People just didn't know what Twitter was for. And so we didn't even know what it was for either. But our ignorance and our naivety, we just started posting random stuff, you know, out there in the air, and we started posting our locations. And people like thought we were being coy in a sense. People thought they used to call us like, you know, a dragon that they were chasing, right? So it was like, people thought we were setting up the scavenger hunt, but literally we were just searching for spots because we were getting chased down and kicked out of spots. So it looked pretty fantastic from the outside. From the inside, we were just the Three Stooges trying to figure stuff out. And I think that innocence and that, you know, in this world today, sometimes it's hard to find that, I guess, that honesty and innocence as adults. And I think that innocence was what, you know, I'm not going to take credit for Twitter, but I do take credit for being a huge part of Twitter, you know, and I think it was that humanity and that innocence and that just dumb, like just like friendship and dumb luck of just like trying to figure stuff out, you know, and, you know, I mean, that's the romantic story of Silicon Valley too, right? Mm-hmm. You know, the garage and all that, and that's really what it was.
Well, a lot of innovation plays out that way, right?
For sure.
Two folks, they get together and they just start talking, they get some ideas, and then there's something that happens that allows them to put it into a usable format that then can go to scale. So, you know, Twitter, you didn't invent Twitter, I don't think, but you saw it as a tool, and it was a tool that could be leveraged pretty dramatically. Crowdsourcing is the same. In your case, Tara, it's interesting to listen to both of you. Did either of you, as you were going through your initial journey, say, wow, we're doing something really new and we're breaking breaking boundaries and I'm going to be an innovator of the year, an entrepreneur. Was that leadership? Did you recognize that you were leaders at that time?
Well, I would say that kind of building on your point, I think there's a bit of ignorance and risk taking. And if you're down and you don't really have anywhere to go but up, then you're going to try whatever you can try. And so I think that that's actually liberating, and that's where a lot of innovation can occur. Because when we first put out the My LA2050 Grants Challenge, we thought, well, we're giving away $1 million online, so people sure as heck had better show up. But we don't know if anyone's going to come to this party. But what do we have to lose? Like, we didn't really have anything to lose. So I think we had to be scrappy and creative. So we didn't really I've been surprised by how successful it's been and how much it's touched so many people and inspired and brought people together. But no, had no idea. But part of it is because I think that's part of the key to creativity and innovation is a little bit of ignorance, a little bit of risk-taking, a little bit of why the hell not.
So I want to talk about the risk-taking, but you really didn't think that when you said I have $1 million to give away?
Well, no. I assumed people would show up. I just didn't know how much and how authentically, and then what kind of continued relationship we would have. That part has surprised me. I knew people would show up. I used to work in fundraising, so yeah, anytime there's $1 million on the table, you better chase it down. Yeah. Exactly. Which was part of the okay, we can get out there and get the word out there by this mechanism, by giving away money, and it's played itself out over and over again when we've done smaller grant challenges and whatnot. But I didn't know that there would be this sustained interest, and that was kind of the gateway drug, so to speak. And then people have stayed on and wanted to learn more on how to participate in Los Angeles and how to be better civic activists and how to get more involved. And it's touched into it's touched something.
For me, I knew right away because it was staring me right in the face. 1,200 hungry people, one truck, you know what I'm saying? Like midnight in a parking lot. So that was, for me, the first wave of it, we were possessed by the flavor, right? The flavor just, the Kogi taco, it tasted like Los Angeles. And it was the first time, like, everything just clicked, because it's hard to describe Los Angeles because we're such a big city spread out, and so many different neighborhoods, so many different things. And so, but then when we ate it, we just knew that we had to share it with people. The first couple months were a little tough because everyone we were feeding was drunk. So so that's why it didn't take off in the first. Everyone loved it in that moment.
I'm sure they did.
Yeah, everyone loved it in that moment, and then no one talked about it. But then I hate to bring up your rival, but at UCLA is where we went viral because outside the club one of those nights, a bunch of girls came out and they loved it, and they were just like, "You got to come to our dorms. You got to come." And so they had spread the word all over campus, and then they were up in the co-op housing off Lanfair and Ophir, and it was this hill, and we're in an old, like, 1980 Grumman truck. And I floored it, and we didn't make it up the hill, and we rolled back down, and then we did it, it took the third time, and we got up to the hill, and then it was like a movie, I swear. Like, we creeped up over the hill, and we turned the corner, and there were 600 people there. They got the word, and then, so at that point is where, like, I knew at that moment that things were changing in my life, because we didn't bring enough food, and they weren't going anywhere. They were college students just like you guys are. They had nowhere to go. They're studying for, I think it was studying for midterms or finals. And so I yelled out, like, "We don't have enough food, but I'm gonna call all my friends and they're gonna bring stuff from K-Town. If you wait, we'll be here." And they waited. Fuck yeah. So we stayed there all night prepping and cooking, and that's where our kind of urban, legend grew. From there, we just started going out to Venice, back to K-Town, to Hollywood. Jonathan Gold wrote a piece on us when we were out in Rosemead. That was the first time we introduced the second truck. And in Rosemead, everyone in the San Gabriel Valley, man, they're so loyal to food out there. And when they heard we were coming, they just came out in force. And then Jonathan's article came out, and we couldn't, and then Art Walk, it was the beginning of Art Walk, we did that, and we just couldn't shake it, you know what I mean? Like, even if we wanted to, we couldn't shake it. So I knew at that time that I had to be the leader of this, because there was no turning away from it. And so for me, it was staring me right in the face.
Were you surprised by the sustained interest? So, one of the things we're going to talk about to both of you about is the notion that through your use of Twitter and crowdsourcing and the like, you created communities that were centered and focused on your stuff, right? And so Roy, you're on the top of the hill at UCLA. I was going to ask, when you ran out of food, you didn't even think about sending that truck back down the hill?
No way.
No, that wasn't happening. But were you surprised at how sustained and were there any moments where you were like, I can't believe this is really happening. I got one truck. What are all these people doing here?
No. So Kogi started in November. We started the night before Thanksgiving, 2008, in Hollywood, right by the Cinerama Dome. There was a club there called Cabana in Green Door, and we started on the night Twilight opened as well. So and we started at midnight. So we started on the night the vampire movie came out at midnight on a foggy night, and there was all this action happening. No. What was the question again?
Were you surprised?
Was
there any moment?
Oh, was there any moment? I was going to turn back. So we started in November, and then February we gave ourselves a deadline because we didn't know this thing was going to be real or not. So we said, we all looked at each other and said, if this thing doesn't take off by February, we're actually going to go back to the real world. But we had 4 months of being a rock and roll band, And so, but by the time February came, forget it, man. We were on CNN, we were driving 3 trucks, trying to feed 2,000 people from West Covina to Santa Barbara, we were all up in it. So that conversation never came.
So it happened so fast, you didn't even have a chance.
We didn't even go back to that conversation. But in November and December, we had a serious conversation. We were because we were partners, right? You're not, partners. We didn't have a contract or anything. But we looked at each other and said, if by the end of February, this thing's not taking off, March 1st, we're all abandoning the truck. No hard feelings. And we kind of did blood brother stuff and just put a thing on the ink on blood on the paper. And, but again, by that time, we couldn't even talk about it. We were just trying to feed the people.
So Tara, you've also built a community. Why don't you talk a little bit about the nature of that community? So Roy's community, a bunch of people wanted to eat, right? Mm-hmm. So now your community is different in that it's more oriented toward social action and activism. Talk a bit about how you viewed the building of that community, and then I'll ask the same question I asked Roy. Were you surprised by the degree to which there was sustained interest?
So I think part of what's interesting about the way this community was built, I think we both tapped into literally and figuratively a hunger.
Yes.
You tapped into hunger
sure.
Physical hunger, and we tapped into a hunger that people wanted to feel connected, that Angelinos wanted to feel connected, they wanted to feel involved, they wanted to have agency in their future, they wanted to do something about that, and they didn't know how to do something about that or where they could go. So I think that was part of it, and I think the other thing that's been, first with GOOD and then with Goldhirsh Foundation and LA2050, is we made the community be stewards of the community. So we used almost like an affinity marketing platform. So when we first launched GOOD, we didn't do the direct mail that everyone does, and people said, you're crazy kids. And I wasn't the kid, I was like the old woman with the pregnant belly, and I was with a bunch of the young boys. But they were like, you're not gonna do the direct mail. And we said, no, instead of doing direct mail, we're gonna enlist nonprofits to communicate to their constituent base. And then if they get someone to subscribe to GOOD, they get the full subscription price back. And so that's similarly to with the crowdsourcing, that we said, we're gonna give away $1 million based in most part on people's vote, directed by people's vote. So people were voting for their favorite group or the group in which they were deeply invested. So what's been interesting is, so it makes sense, we've got these foot soldiers out there who still have a hunger for getting involved and also a hunger for the money. But then what's interesting is they do feel like they're part of something bigger. LA2050 is a program of the Goldhirsh Foundation. A lot of people haven't heard of the Goldhirsh Foundation, but then when I talk about LA2050, people are like, oh my God, LA2050. And it's kind of this entity in and of itself, and it's an entity that's directed by the community. All that we did, we have 5 goals for LA2050, making LA the best place to learn, create, connect, live, play by 2050. And those were community generated. And then we change the grants challenge every year based on what we get feedback from the community, because we're only as good as our community is good. We're only as good as the individuals we choose to support. So we better be listening to that community and sort of fostering it.
So how many organizations or people have gotten grants through the program?
Directly through ours, it's been about 10 every year. So we're now in our 5th year. So 40.
So 40.
50, yeah. And then we've also had ripple effect that we've gotten other funders involved. So Annenberg just announced 2 days ago about that they gave money, an additional almost $200,000 for groups. Roy and Patricia Disney Family Foundation has given money. Annenberg has given money in the past. So, but the ones with whom we have a fiduciary responsibility, it's about 50. I think it's about 40. I think I'm a little bit off, but they're great, and they all feel connected by this umbrella brand of LA2050. Whereas if I had just given them a grant from the Goldhirsh Foundation, they'd be like, "Oh, thanks, you guys are sweet." But it's this broader kind of universal. I mean, it's still a small universe, but it's this kind of collective spirit that they feel part
We'll
of
take some money at local.
Yeah. Well, actually, we should talk after.
I think we just got a deal done here. So do the 40 grantees, the approximately 40 grantees, do they communicate with each other now? Or do you facilitate opportunities for them to get together and have learning sessions and feedback?
I'd say both. And I worked in fundraising before, so I'm very cognizant and very sensitive of asking people to do things as a funder. Like, I recognize that I, as a funder, can say, "Hey, let's all get together and work together," and that's just not realistic. I mean, how frequently does that actually happen in the real world? So we try to make interesting intersections. We try to kind of connect the dots and do yenta-ing, like, oh, this person's like 826 was doing creative writing. We were like, oh, you're doing this with a hammer. Why don't you do this with Homeboy? And we try connecting the dots, but we don't force anything. We also bring people together and celebrate them. I mean, we have events in which it's just a free party. You can drink. You've got the food trucks. You've got the tattoos, the photo booths, everything. We try making everything we do accessible, fun, beautiful, and in a way that people want to be there anyway. They don't feel like, oh God, I've got to go to another funder event. So, and we've seen that there are some really interesting intersections.
So that's very interesting, particularly in a foundation space.
Yes.
Where, the foundation world can be very, here's the application, there are 27 questions, and then after you should answer the 27, you better show me 5 years of balance sheet and all this kind of stuff. And they certainly aren't having, open houses where everyone gets to drink whatever they want to drink. Why did you feel comfortable turning that foundation model on its head and making your organization such an accessible type of organization?
I think part of it goes back to the necessity. We're a small foundation. I mean, relatively speaking, our endowment, from which we give away 5% every year, is what the Annenberg Foundation gives away every year. So we had to be different and clever and creative. And I am very happy and excited every single day going to work by doing something a little bit different, a little bit fun. And I feel like if philanthropy can't take some risks, then who can? We're not going to be voted out of office. We're not going to lose our jobs because we didn't make a sales number. So we better do that. That being said, there are times when I am uncomfortable. I've even called the little kid playing outside of the sandbox, being like, "Hey, do you guys want to play with us? We're doing something different and fun." And some people are really kind and then say thanks, but no thanks. And others are like, "What are you guys doing?" And I think I think there's a kind of a youthful, risk-taking entrepreneurial spirit that each of us involved with the foundation has, and that we try to inculcate in our grantees, and that we try bringing other funders along, because it can be a little uncomfortable, but I wouldn't be comfortable with business as usual.
One last question on this line, because my experience with foundations has often been, if we think there's any chance your project is going to fail, we're not going to give you any money. And you're talking about foundations as the first loss position. Right? You guys are taking risks on organizations that, it's an idea, right? That's not proven. How much failure are you comfortable with?
I am probably less comfortable with the amount of failure that my board chair, Ben Goldhirsh, whose name is on the foundation, wants me to take. He wants us to fail faster and harder and stronger. But I think that knowing that that's coming from the top, I feel comfortable testing. And we are often the first money in. We're investing in leadership. I think of us as like a venture capital model for social good. We're not going to be making any money off of this. But if we see someone with a great idea who has tremendous leadership potential, and we can bring some of the social and financial and human capital to surround this person or this idea, then we're going to give it a try. And I actually, when I first moved to LA, I started an education reform network, and I had a lot of people come sit on my living room floor, and I feel like had the Goldhirsh Foundation been around, I just needed like $2,500 to get a website going or something, and I didn't get it. And I feel like, gosh, I wish I'd had the Goldhirsh Foundation, because who knows where that thing could have been. But I feel that acutely when someone comes to us with a good, I mean, you can't just have a good idea and have a charming personality, I feel like it's our role to do that. There aren't a lot of foundations who can do that, or who will do that.
And one thing I'll say is, Roy, you spoke to this when you said that you embraced a lot of things that most saw as worthless, right? You saw value in things that others didn't see value in. And, for our society, if we all do that, we just create the same cycle again and again and again, and new people don't get in, and there aren't real opportunities for different kinds of outcomes like your outcome, or your outcome, both of you, of really, you're not the usual suspects. And there will be lots of folks who are grateful for you for recognizing that there are a lot of other non-usual suspects that could be the next Roy Choi or Tara Roth. And that's really interesting. So Roy, you're actually doing a new venture now. It's local. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. Well, you're going to experience it after this. We got free food for you. Yeah, go ahead. But local is, who knows what local really is yet? What we do know, though, is that it's an important thing, it's a beautiful thing, and it's definitely something that its purpose is to break a systematic cycle. And that systematic cycle runs through every layer of us as people and our humanity and our societal kind of lifestyles. It's really looking things in the face and asking, why are we accepting that hundreds of thousands of people in our cities have no jobs, can never get a job, have nothing to eat? Why are they trapped by the system and the welfare system? And really looking at all of these things and mistakes or choices they've made earlier in their life that will haunt them forever, because a criminal record will never allow them to get a job, or the education that they were brought up in will never prepare them for a job. And then it's looking at all of these complex issues, but breaking it down to our first step by just doing it from a very wholesome way, instead of trying to look at it macro and from a political level. We decided to do it from a grandmother level, and which is just feeding people. And so the idea started first. I had reached a point through Kogi where I had been through this revolution of food, and I came out the other end a different person. And I couldn't, I could have gone a bunch of different ways. I could have been balling in Vegas with 2 champagne bottles, that could have been a way I could have gone. But I came out another way, and I came out a way of my purpose in life became to feed as many people as I could before I'm physically gone, right? So, and that allowed me to look at my own industry, the leaders in our industry, and then I was set up to speak at this conference in Copenhagen called MAD, which was organized by Rene Redzepi from Noma, he's the best chef in the world and the best restaurant in the world. It's a G20 summit of the best chefs and food operators. They all go to this little island in Copenhagen, and the theme of the conference was guts. So when they gave me that topic, a lot of other presenters, they all, internalized it their own ways, some literally, some, not literally. But for me, it was the guts to speak to my community, my colleagues, and tell them that we weren't doing enough. because we were actually the gatekeepers, and no matter what policies are ahead of us or constricting us, the fact is we're the ones that hold all the food, right? So we can actually be the revolution. We can actually be the force of change. We can actually be the punk rockers and break the window because we actually hold the food. So I kind of put that out there to the chefs. I didn't know what to expect from it. I just had to go out there, tell them, and then drop the mic and walk off, right? So, but what happened is in the audience, Daniel Patterson, who is one of the best chefs in the world, called me from San Francisco, and he just was really moved by it, and he was trying to do the same thing up there, but just didn't have the vehicles for it. And we connected, and we decided to start from the beginning. Let's create a fast food restaurant, prices around $4 or $5. Let's try to put it right in the middle of the inner city, and let's hire from the neighborhood, develop, and not make it a nonprofit from the beginning. Let's try to look prosperity and economy directly in the eye, and wealth. And the big problem a lot of our communities have is we've built a difficult relationship with money, right? Because again, if you go back to the situation where there are no jobs and there are no opportunities, and then a lot of our folks have bad credit, right? And then they can't open a bank account, so then they can't save money or build credit. So then you have a cash-based economy, check cashing, and then percentages are taking out. And then that takes a toll on your psychology because then you're pissed off, right? Like, damn, man, like they took $20 out of my check, and then it just fuels everything around you. And so what we wanted to do was really just create a place where, one, we could feed people. We could feed people great food, delicious food made from scratch, and we could create a relationship of loving good things and a relationship with wealth and prosperity. That this thing could be successful. We dreamed. It will be overflowing with money and success and all these things, and you're gonna grow, and you will become successful, and you will grow all these things. The kids watching you will see auntie or uncle working, and they will have a vision and a tapestry and a memory point of success. So that was one thing, and I won't continue going on too long, but another important part was memory to me. Because what we have over generations since probably about, you're the educator, so I'm just a street kid, but probably since about the 50s or 60s, we've had a lot of our generations, because of this repetitive inability to gain jobs and have economy, you have maybe 3 or 4 generations now, growing up as a kid, you don't have a memory point of seeing, successful endeavors and investments into your community. What I've always imagined is now a small little hamburger shop will be the memory point for these 8-year-old kids and 5-year-old kids and 12-year-old kids. So no matter what happens or whatever dirt anyone gets into later on, at least there'll be one thing that can balance that scale. And then if local becomes successful, then, like with any economy, investors will come, developers will come, and then there'll be 2 things, then there'll be 3 things, and then on and on. So there's that. And then the last piece of it was just nutrition itself. Even if we take away all of these bigger issues that, all these politicians try to fix and never do, you have the fact that on top of all that bullshit, it's the pain and the struggle on the outside, but it's also what's going in the body. This corrosive stuff is killing people from the inside out. So not only are you worried about your health and your livelihood and your life from the outside, but this secret death on the inside from these corporations, most of our folks die by their 50, because they've been eating Cheetos and chemicals and processed food, and that stuff just builds up, and then by the time you become 50, you don't have enough, whatever it is inside of you, to fight it anymore, and then you die, so sorry to be so depressing. But
this is the happy portion of our program.
But so it's getting those nutrients, right? So you're an educator. So let's say even if you have all of the restrictions, you have, budgets being cut, crammed classrooms, right? Not a great access to art programs. Even the educators themselves are being funneled through and pushed through, right? No one's really caring about your program. But even without all of those things, on top of that, you're eating food that has no vitamins and no nutrients. So even if you did have programs where you could succeed, you don't have the mental ammunition because the stuff going in your body doesn't allow you to do that. So we thought about all those things.
So there's been a lot of research about how good food is not evenly distributed across a metropolitan area, and how there are a number of places, you hear people talk about food deserts, where you can't get whole wheat bread.
It's gotta be.
You can't get no-fat milk, right? And the best food you're gonna get is a Hot Pocket, right? And it's hard to imagine how you're gonna have a healthy diet in that regard. Another thing you said I thought was really interesting was a recognition that what you're doing is a symbol that others are going to look to, right? Because a lot of the hopelessness is because people don't believe that there's any way that from where they are, they can achieve. The system is stacked against them. I mean, actually, much of the recent presidential campaign, some of the most popular candidates on both sides were telling people the system is stacked against you. You're basically hosed, and there's no hope. I'm going to be your hope. And it's interesting, you're both of you, I think, are creating opportunities for there to be a whole host of new people who are those hopes that are outside of the governmental space. And one of the reasons why this is a Bedrosian Center thing is because so much of governance, when people think of governance, they think about it as government. But there's a lot of governance that's not government. It's nonprofits doing great things, it's philanthropy doing great things, it's individuals and entrepreneurs doing great things, and that together we all can create a different kind of community and society. And it's one of the reasons why I'm really excited that both of you agreed to talk.
Might need to change the name from governance because people get confused. It's more like a stewardship, you know, like it's like that confusion between government and governance.
Yeah, so that's so Aubrey, I hope you're writing this down. So we're going to talk to Mr. Bedrosian and see if we can change the name of the center. Well, because I do think that it is important that we find ways to allow people from wherever they are and however they come to contribute. And to feel like they're contributing, to own it. I mean, Tara, so much of what you're doing is really saying, okay, if you have an idea and you think you can contribute, let's give you some money and see if it works, because if it does, you know, we're in a much better place. And so I wanted to turn now to impact and the question of, you know, what difference has all this meant for you personally, and then for the communities that have been affected by the things that you've done. Tara, talk a little bit about how both the GOOD Magazine and then Goldhirsh, the foundation, and the LA2050 Grants Challenge, you know, what difference has it made?
Well, for me personally, I grew up inspired by this quotation by Marian Wright Edelman that service is the rent we pay for life on this earth. And I was, at the beginning of my career, I was a little conflicted about how do I do this? Do I go and make a lot of money and then give back in some way, or do I go and dedicate myself to kind of public service, which is what I feel like I'm doing, and I feel like I'm doing my life's work now. There are times when I feel like I wish I could get paid private sector, but that's a different thing. So that's the personal difference it's made for me. Every single day I feel good about what I'm doing. I feel inspired, encouraged by the people who are out in the front lines doing the work. I mean, that's really where I source my inspiration. In terms of the impact that it's made, I think some of it is, this is always the big question in philanthropy, like how are you measuring impact? And then especially if you're giving a one-year grant. I mean, that's, you know, are you going to change graduation rates in 1 year? No. Are you going to change food desert? No. But you can see small differences that groups make in terms of their outputs. Like how many people, you know, talked about food deserts, that we actually supported a for-profit organization that brought fresh fruits and vegetables into bodegas, and they taught kids how to do pricing and positioning within these little markets. So it was teaching kids how to have a technical skill, and then it was actually introducing neighborhoods with fresh produce. So I look at that and I think that's great because that's touched those kids' lives. That's maybe made a difference in the consumption habits and patterns and awareness of the people in the neighborhoods, and then just the individual organizations we've supported. So, you know, how many students' lives have been impacted? How much transformation of space has been taken over? I mean, that's one thing we saw about talking about community kind of taking control and agency and contributing and also benefiting. We've had groups that have come in and said, we want to reimagine this blighted alleyway, and what can we do to make it a place where there's no green space around, where it's a recreational space where we can lift weights and connect as a community. So in those small ways, and then in the bigger way that this LA 2050 thing has been a unifying, positive, aspirational, hopeful brand and movement for people to buy into. And then again, that's bigger than the sum of its parts, that it's, and we constantly have people coming to us saying, how can we help? How can we volunteer or get involved? And we're just at a loss for being able to plug people into all these different opportunities. So I think that there are a lot of things. We're actually doing kind of an inventory of how have we made a difference? How have we impacted things? And I look at, there's sort of a zeitgeist of, look at the recent elections. I mean, the recent elections, the downside is that 12% of people voted. So it's like, how do we get to those other 88%? But then the upside is we voted to tax ourselves more. We voted for transportation. We voted to help people, the homeless. So that's a positive influence that I think we helped contribute to. We can't say that we caused any of that, but we helped contribute to that awareness and that movement.
Well, it's very interesting. The last two elections in Los Angeles, the city has voted to tax itself to help people, right? To help the neediest of the needy people in terms of the homeless. And both of them passed pretty easily.
Yes.
Which is quite different than where we'd been maybe a decade ago,
Yes.
where many of these measures were not meeting with the same level of support. So maybe we have turned a corner in Los Angeles. One can only hope, because there is a lot of need out there, and you're tapping into it. I would be remiss, you do the LA2050 Grants Challenge. One of the Bedrosian alum, Jean Marie is here. I want to just give a shout out to her. Keep doing the great things that you're doing. If you see her out there when you get your food, say thank you, because she's great. So Roy, in terms of impact, I wanted to talk to you and have you talk a little bit specifically about the transformation that's happened in street vending. When you started, you said the police were chasing you to move you from site to site. How has that changed in the time since you started your Kogi trucks?
Well, the cops ate the Kogi burrito. They're like, they're like, you ain't going nowhere, son. It's changed. I mean, that's what gave me personally the confidence to tackle local, was that I had been through one revolution. I saw the revolution happen as I was living it, right? Like, I'm from here in LA, but the general country and world had a stereotypical view of street food, right, before Kogi. Unless you were from it, unless you were a child of an immigrant, unless you live as an immigrant in this country, the general consensus of street food was being a roach coach, right, or it was being a lunch truck, or you're gonna get sick off it, or it's dirty. So there was all these horrible stereotypes and monikers of what street food was. By Kogi coming out and doing what we did, I saw it go from that through this whole transformation, and the whole country and world changed before my eyes. The first wave, not outside of the people coming out and hanging out in the parking lot, no longer was it. So one first wave is when I talked about the things that I loved that people found worthless. One of those things was hanging out in the parking lot, right? Before hanging out in the parking lot, people were, whether it's a cop or someone else, would come and say, what are you doing here? Because the automatic stereotypical reaction to that is you're doing something wrong. Why are you hanging out in an empty parking lot? You're up to something. But instead, people started hanging out in parking lots and getting to know each other, creating community, you had to stand in line for 2-3 hours, right? So you got to know each other. Or maybe you got to catch up on your favorite, I don't know if there were podcasts at that time, but your favorite audiobook. You got to, read a book. You got to do all these things. The second wave was I saw people in mass exodus leave their jobs and go out and start selling their grandma's waffles, on the street in Austin, Seattle, Portland, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Boston, MIT, everywhere. And everyone started just going out and creating these communities. And then I saw the same people, saying trucks are dirty, hiring them for the kids' birthday parties. You know what I'm saying? And then where they used to pull the kid away from the truck, thinking that the truck had cooties, to all of a sudden hiring it for his birthday party. So all of a sudden you start to break down walls amongst ourselves as people, of what we thought of each other, of what we were told about each other, of what we imagined each other to be. And by breaking, and I really noticed that a lot of our prejudices and racism and stereotypes comes from fear, and it comes from ignorance and not knowing. Because the reason why I know that and experience it is because once they did try it, all those discussions, they were just so paper thin, they fell to the side, and it just became about the experience. And and then the third wave of that impact was going global. Then we start to see it in Paris, we start to see it in Spain and South Africa, Australia. And then that whole impact started going, and then all these international journalists started coming to Los Angeles to cover this phenomenon, to spark their economies back across the world. And so we started creating this small business, step-by-step economy that was considered a cockroach, right? And then now it's, a billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar industry. And so, if that isn't an impact, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I think that rates.
Yeah.
I think that rates. So just listening to both of you, you've been super inspiring. I'm wondering if there are lessons that you've learned in being your leaders from the West and doing the things that you've done. How has it changed you? How has it changed your perspectives on what's possible and how the world can and should work?
Well, I think something that Roy just tapped into, and he tapped into and changed an industry, is going back to your roots. What do you do best, and how do you do best what you do best? And I think that's what characterizes Los Angeles, that you can do whatever in the world you want to do here. You can be whoever you want to be. And it's actually that kind of mashup of all of that makes LA so interesting, and that I think that the rest of the world is watching and should continue to watch, because I think it really is showing how whatever your race, your religion, we can all live together very peacefully. We can combine tastes, and we can bring different industries together. Government can work with nonprofits, with brands, and I think that's what's really magical and inspiring, is that really anything is possible if we're all going to work together and try to be connected in some common way. I think that's just finding the commonality, and then leveraging what we all do well already, and then combining that somehow.
Yeah, she's hitting it on the head. We're the Wild West, and that's really what makes it so special out here. Is we're not held down by draconian laws. I'm not speaking in a legal sense. I'm just more a metaphorical sense.
Just the norms.
Just the norms, yeah. But we're not held down by generations. We're not. It's not fully a city built around Western European, forefathers and immigration. It's a young city. It's a young economy. It's everything that it's wide open sometimes. Like she says, and you can do things and get away with it. Mm-hmm. That's the most important thing. Like for me, is that. Sometimes, we're just so big as a city, we're just so wide open, the weather's so good, everyone's just chilling, doing their own thing, that you can start a revolution without getting caught. You know what I mean? That's what basically Kogi is, Whereas I couldn't have started this in New York, you know what I mean? I couldn't have started in the middle of Manhattan, come on. You know, it's too much under the microscope. And by being from the West, you have the ability to mainly get away with stuff. And I think by getting away with stuff, especially if you're not doing it, maliciously, if you're doing something really great and you're getting away with it, then that allows it to breathe. Whereas with, when you're not in the West, you may hit roadblocks before you even get to that point, and that's the difference, I think, in this leading from the West, is that we get to the point, we get there, whereas other cities or other areas may not even get close to there. So even if it fails, we get to see kind of like what it fully was meant to be,
Yeah, so when I'm not from Los Angeles originally, I'm from the East Coast. And,
Where are you from?
South Jersey, outside of Philadelphia.
Okay.
And it's suburban,
Yeah.
non-adventurous, very kind of, everybody wears the same clothes, they don't, all
Yeah.
that stuff. When I moved out here, the first thing that struck me, when you land at LAX and you get out off the plane, people are wearing everything, right? People are, it's a very different place. Like if you land there, you land in New York, everyone's wearing black. You land in Salt Lake City, everyone is blonde. They all look exactly the same. And here, you just know you're in a different place. And the thing that has always been remarkable to me is that in LA, whatever you're doing, if you do it like you meant to do it on purpose and with no apology, no one says anything. They just let you do it.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very different thing. The Bedrosian Center, we've started a podcast called LA Hashtags Itself. So, and it is very much who is LA and how does LA manifest itself in all the many different ways. And a lot of what you're talking about is exactly that. So we are moving almost to the end of our time, and I wanted to make sure there was time for questions. So if you have questions, I think we have 2 microphones up here that you should come up and...
It's like the actor studio.
Yeah, that's what we do.
With James Lipton.
This is what we do here.
Jesse Levitt in the math department, as it turns out. I guess to talk to what you were just saying about LA being the Wild West, 3 of the last 4 cities I've lived in have been much smaller than Los Angeles and have tried to develop cultures or kind of a grassroots culture of philanthropy that I've kind of had an opportunity to observe, but failed in large part. And I kind of wonder if there's also a question of scale. I mean, the largest one is 250,000 people. And I guess the question is, do you think the size of Los Angeles plays a role, or more importantly, if you're a smaller city, what could you do to develop the same sort of, grassroots cultural inspiration?
But there are smaller cities where food truck culture or grassroots culture works. Portland, I think, is relatively a small city. Austin is not the biggest city in the world. I've seen food trucks thrive in. Where else is a small city I've seen it thrive? I think there's certain parts of the Midwest where it's thriving as well.
But let me jump in and ask the question a different way. So, are there many small places that you know of where anything goes kind of rules? Right. So Austin is bohemian.
Yeah.
But there's an Austin kind of bohemian. Like you do South by Southwest, you know what you're gonna get. Portland is the same way. You don't get the same kind of diversity. And is there something about the scale of Los Angeles that facilitates that, or is it just something more organic that's happened here and we've kind of evolved to a different kind of acceptance of the different?
Well, that's
variety?
definitely it. LA, we are LA, so definitely here it's going to be a lot more impactful and developed. But in the smaller markets, anything can work. It just has to be good. I believe in the goodness of stuff. Like it's gotta be banging, and maybe that shit just ain't that good, to be honest, it's gotta be like all the way good, You know, so I truly believe in the science of the undeniable factor of something, right? So like even if I'm in a small town of 50,000 people or 100,000 people or 200,000 people, I lived in small towns too coming up in my career. You know, I lived in the desert in Borrego Springs, I lived in South Lake Tahoe, towns of 4,000, all that. You make something good, people are gonna line up for it. You know, people are gonna want it. So maybe some of those opportunities that didn't make it, maybe they just weren't developed all the way yet. And maybe that goes back to the argument of maybe their expression of it wasn't fully developed. I don't believe that the audience itself wouldn't support it, because if something's good, it's gonna get through.
Can I also just say I think that there is a benefit to the size of Los Angeles, because I feel like what Roy was saying, that you can try anything, and then the beauty of it is if you fail, you can actually reinvent yourself, and no one really cares. They're just, you know, this is a place where people reinvent themselves all the time, or they come to be. There's a quotation I love. Robert Eggers, who runs a nonprofit called the LA Kitchen, says that LA is where the future comes to happen. And that's like, there's constant reinvention, there's constant reimagining, and I think that's liberating, because then that leads to let's take a risk, let's try, and then if it's successful, you have a huge metropolis area here in Los Angeles. That, I mean, I also say that LA has every problem and every solution. So if you can figure it out in LA, you can figure it out in the rest of the world, and the rest of the world can take some lessons, and vice versa. So I don't want us to forget in this current climate.
So it's hard to compare, I think, based on it's hard to compare a small market to LA, because LA is just, I mean, like the old idiom of if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. That's old, man.
It's LA.
LA's the spot, you
It's
know.
true.
LA is what
It's
the
true.
future is, you know.
Yeah.
But
I love bagging on New York when I can.
so New York is all right. I don't want to get down on New York.
I got family out there, but I love taking shots at it.
But you know, Los Angeles does have a reputation of being accepting for dreamers, and I think as a fraction of the population, even a huge population like this, it attracts a disproportionate number of dreamers. That then allows all of the things that you guys have accomplished to occur. Transformation in food trucks. We're going to hopefully see a transformational philanthropic approaches to funding projects, and both of those are
and it's only increased because of the technology in the last 20 years. You know, like we always had it with the entertainment industry and other things, but now with the online and with the social media and with technology, it's just opened the floodgates for all these creative dreamers to come to Los Angeles.
So can you say more? You agree with that?
Well, I do, and I was also going to say, and also to demand more, and because of the technology, you better respond immediately and appropriately if you're hearing from. So I mean, I'm thinking about it in the context of a community group or citizens who are upset about at a brand or upset about government, partly because of technology, because you can elevate and escalate an issue so quickly. I think that it has to make systems more responsive. I mean, I think it's a shortcoming. And then I do think that philanthropy is changing. I mean, there's going to be a huge intergenerational transfer of wealth, and we've already seen actually something that Angie pioneered was a board member in residence program to bring young board members, like the Disney family. When you turn 18, the Disney family, you automatically join their foundation board, to bring them in to teach them about philanthropy, especially in philanthropy that makes sense to them, where they can go online and check things out without having to have a conversation on demand stuff. So.
Mm-hmm. Next question.
Hi, thanks for coming out here. So I want to hear specifically from your viewpoints and kind of talking about LA as a city. What has been a challenge that you've really underestimated, and something that you thought was going to be much easier to overcome, but has continued to kind of give you grief in solving? Or maybe another way of phrasing that also would be, if we just had enough X to solve X, and kind of taking it from there. Thanks.
For Kogi, I never had that be an issue. We entered in Finding Nemo, we entered the EAC, man. You know, it's like the East Australian current, you know, like we entered it and it just kept us going. We never had a worry in the world, you know. But with local, to that equation that you bring up, I think about it every day because I see the face of poverty and you know, and need every single day of my life. And so, you know, I don't know if we're going to be successful. I don't know if we have enough money to survive. I don't know if we have enough jobs to produce. I don't know if anyone's going to be inspired by this because, for God's sakes, no one's been fucking inspired by it till now, you know, or else we wouldn't have this disparity between, you know, all these people never being able to make it out. You know what I'm saying? You know, so like I think about that every day of like what am I going to need to be able to move this needle? You know, like it can't be just a little hamburger shop, or can it? You know, and if so, what are we going to need? You know, we can't change the economic structure of the United States of America selling $4 burgers. So I think about what allies do we need to bring into this process? What resources do we need? How much time do we need to be able to prove that this model is something that we all can look at, and developers and investors can reinvest back into parts of every city that they've abandoned for the last 50, 60 years. So I think about that.
And I would say, kind of also to your point, that you have a hamburger place. What's the broader impact going to be? How can you get there? And something we think about is we've created this great grants challenge where an interesting statistic is many people equate voting in an online grants challenge to voting in a public election. So I think that's a very scary and also very motivating fact. So I look at, like, our universe, we have like 120, 130,000 people on our newsletter and our Twitter following and Facebook and whatnot, but we're still only like chipping away at a tiny percentage of Angelinos. And when we talk about Angelinos, I'm talking about the county. And how can we get that aforementioned 88% who didn't show up to vote? I mean, thank God we passed some amazing things with that powerful 12%, but what can we do to make real systems change? Because philanthropy and private sector, I mean, that's why we all need to work together, because we can all only do so much. So we definitely need to change policy, change legislation, change laws, rules, because that's the only way we're going to have major social impact, social change in a place where we all want to live.
A lot of good ideas get bogged down in startup costs. Can you talk about what you've learned about accessing capital and how people from marginalized communities that might not have obvious access to capital can better access it?
Access to capital in marginalized communities. First of all, there's got to be capital to access. You can look at it from one angle. You could look at it from the cerebral educational level, or people will always point out all of the progress that has been made, or things that do exist, but you talk to the streets, you go down to the people, and you hear the real story. Everyone's wondering, where is all that money? Ain't nothing changed in my life, ain't nothing changed in my mama's life, so for me, it's that reality of trying to figure out the bridge between what's really happening and what the policies of what we think are happening. And, the hood doesn't need another garden, you know what I'm saying? Like, we need jobs. We need education, and we need people to invest money and hire from the community, not bring money out. And so that money needs to be circular, and it needs to develop, and people need to have access to small business and ownership and all these things. So, but there hasn't been a model for people with money and finance to be inspired to do it, right? So I'm trying to, just for our part, we're just trying to create a successful business. And by creating that successful business with a little bit of notoriety, right? You know, we got a couple celebrity chefs attached to it. There's, you know, I got a loud mouth, you know, and like, you know, we bring some attention to it that maybe others will come in. You know, I always joke that people ask me, are you worried that Watts will be gentrified, right? Like, I'm like, yeah, gentrify the fuck out of that shit, man. You know, like, you know, it's better than what we got right now, you know? Because people Watts ain't going nowhere. They're not going to be moving out nowhere. But if you bring the money in, that's you know, it's better than what we got right now. So you know, I'm not afraid of gentrification. It's like with Koreatown right now, where I'm from. Like, people worried about Korea. You know, the Koreans and Latinos ain't moving out of Koreatown. You know, we're too strong, we're too big. So all the investment coming in is just good for the community. You know, it's just good for the economy. And so that will be the same thing for Watts or Compton or North St. Louis, you know, Detroit, you know, South Chicago, you know, Baltimore. We could go on and on, man. We got 25 cities out there. West Atlanta. You move to Atlanta, talking Killer Mike. Man, Killer Mike already got it all laid out, you know. And so, yes, so it's the notoriety right now. That's all I got, man. That's the only hustle I got right now. And thank you.
So I wanted to ask you two questions on that. In terms, one, you should be afraid of gentrification.
Okay.
Because there are instances where it does force people out.
It was a joke, but yes.
So just for the record, we're on tape, so I'm on stage, and if someone says, you know, we don't have word gentrification, it'd be like, why didn't you say it? Anyway, I gotta cover
it. No, but I want to hear it.
But there is an ongoing concern that as money comes in, money only wants to be around other money. And that if you don't have money, it becomes more difficult for you to stay. And it's problematic on two fronts. One, you know, the people who have been in the neighborhood kept it together through really all the hard times and have really put it in a position so that it could move to the next level. They are at risk of not benefiting once it actually gets to the better place.
But that's the X factor, is the new economy is to create that power and that success, but share it with the people. So that's the riddle I'm trying to figure out, is how can we create that economy and not have it gentrify and people being pushed out, but actually sharing the wealth. You know, so
well, when you figure that out, you should definitely let us know.
I'm close, man. I'm close. I just need smart people like you, man.
So we call this so in the academic field we call this equitable economic development.
Okay.
Right, where you're doing economic development and everybody shares in the riches. Yes. And it's more elusive than you would think, and in part I think it's because how communities have formed means that there are groups of people who are not present where the money is present. And what you've done is you've said, look, we're the money and we're the hood at the same time.
Yes.
And so all the voices are there so that we're mindful of who should be sharing. And then we take steps to make sure that people share. That doesn't happen. So in many neighborhoods, like even with Measure S that we just dealt with, you know, there were many people in favor of Measure S who were afraid that if we allow development in their neighborhood, they're going to have to move. And that the people who are going to come in and build these things, they're not going to ask me what kind of building I need.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to build the condos and serve people who are different from us, who are then going to ask us, maybe not even ask us to leave. I like what you're doing precisely because it is the frontier of where we see tension in urban places, right? And we're not going to get to inclusive, fully realized urban places if half the population doesn't believe that the city cares about them or that the city can do things for them. And you're taking us in a different place, and that's really...
Well, where my math is on it is that I'm fully aware and I've accepted, again, my hustle, my notoriety, right? So my celebrity factor. And so I'm using that for being the gatekeeper. So I want to position ourselves to be kind of like the oversight committee in a sense. So I feel like if people do want to develop in in these communities that I've listed throughout this conversation, that somehow I could be like reviewing their application. You know what I'm saying? Like,
You want to be like
The
Tara.
Godfather.
yeah, I'd be like you.
That's
So I
what-
would be
that's
like
what
you.
she's doing.
I'll be like, okay, how many people are you gonna hire? How many people are you gonna hire? I want like 80, 90% from the community, you know? Like, what are you paying them? This, and that, you know? How much you gonna put back into the community, you know? And all these things. And then the reason why I feel like I can have that stand is because they're gonna wanna be connected to us. They're gonna wanna be connected to me. They wanna ride that wave, you know? Right? Because I get to cover magazines, I get the headlines, all that stuff, right? So I'm fully cognizant and aware that I'm gonna flip that and use that, you know? So that's really what I try to do.
May I add two quick things?
Absolutely.
One specifically just about the access to capital is there is a group called Opportunity Fund, which makes loans to small businesses in LA, and they were started in Northern California, and they're fantastic. They gave a loan to Cool House when Cool House's truck broke down, and they knew that Coachella was like their inflection point to become Cool House or to put it all away, you know, like your March deadline. And they, Opportunity Fund swept in, Ricky's Tacos, like there are a bunch of different really great LA stories, and so there are different pockets with access to capital. And then another thing I was going to say is one thing that we've seen community involvement in shaping their community. So we've seen communities use, like Trust South LA has like gone in and taken over foreclosed lots and said, we're going to, because this is a trust in LA by residents of South LA, we're going to put 2 houses on a foreclosed lot so we can actually address some of the affordable housing. Or we see organizations who are using online, like user-generated websites to upload, like where are there spots that there could be a farm or a garden or like a play space or something. And then one thing that I just tweeted about recently was Mexico City is crowdsourcing its constitution. Like it's sort of like there are these mechanisms for real community engagement that people are listening to. And again, to the extent that there is going to be an outcry if people aren't listened to, and the technology enables this escalation that people can't necessarily ignore.
And there's just the new sector of crowdfunding where you can own things now, right? Like with Indiegogo, you don't have to be an accredited investor
Totally.
now. So
Yes.
you could just be someone with $2,500 and actually own things. You know, because
Yeah.
ownership is a big thing in this country,
Yes.
right? Like not being able to own things,
Yep.
and generations of not owning things, and so I think that's going to be. I don't know how developed that is in the crowdfunding
It's now legal. So one of the
Yeah.
things that we did, we had a White House fellow who helped work on the Jobs Act and helped work on like Startup America and all of these resources for small businesses. That there are. It's just a matter of what I see. One of the hurdles I see is getting that information to the people who need it and who can benefit from it the most, because there is a big gap in that. Because there are resources, but then it's like, how do you? And I mean, you talk about yourself as a bridge. I see myself as this connector too. Like, how can I bring to bear resources and networks that I have to people who are out there doing amazing work? And I think that there would be a mutual benefit if someone with money can give to someone. So it's a matter of continuing to serve in that network.
Well, you guys are fantastic, and we're out of time, I think.
We could take 2 more questions.
All right. I've been
I
overruled.
feel bad for those 2 right there.
All right, so we got 2 more
Or
questions.
3. We got 3. Make them quick.
All right, so there's food in the back. So all right, please come on.
Thank you both so much for speaking today. My name is Olivia, and I'm a graduating senior here at USC. Something I think I've realized during my 4 years here in college is that many of my peers and colleagues want to know, they're curious about how they can integrate social impact into their fields of study or their work. No matter what they're studying, I'm in the communication as well as the business schools, and in both places as well as outside of those as well. All over campus, they want to be involved. They want to integrate social impact into their future lives in a very meaningful way. So with that in mind, I just wanted to ask if you had any pieces of advice for any young aspiring change makers that we have here on campus, but also elsewhere. Maybe things that you wish you knew before embarking on your separate paths.
My short answer is just get involved, you know, You guys, your generation right now is just so inspiring to me, all the time. And it was your generation 8 years ago that built Kogi, it was a young generation that came out and ate with us, and it has an impact, So I would say, don't second guess yourselves, because the older people above you, man, they messed up a lot of stuff. So you guys are the ones that can actually fix it, So trust yourselves and go do it.
I think I would iterate, I would say recognize your power, because I keep saying to my tiny staff of young women, I'm like, everyone wants to get to you. Everyone's trying to market to you. So volunteer, donate. I mean, we have someone who does design full time on our staff. I have 3 people, including me, on staff full time, and one of them does design, and she came from USC as a design student. You can use your skills. A lot of different nonprofits, especially, want to have your skills. You don't need to work for the nonprofit. You can be in the advisory board. You can volunteer. You can donate. Vote in the My LA2050 Grants challenge. I mean, go vote in your public election. Go show up to your neighborhood council. Run for your neighborhood council. Run for office. I mean, do some. You guys are more powerful than you think.
So, big buzzword nowadays is innovation. And speaking of podcasts today, there's a Freakonomics one called In Praise of Maintenance, and the idea that we are so hell-bent on creating new things that we often forget, building up our infrastructure. And LA2050 Grants Challenge, you get a lot of sexy ideas come forward to you, and some of a lot of your decision-making is from the majority. It's a democratic decision-making. But from your side, how do you determine how well this is going to play as a PR thing? Is an infrastructure redevelopment, as worthy as $100,000 is something that's entirely unheard of?
So how do we decide that? Sorry.
Maintenance or innovation, what do you value in the LA2050 Grants Challenge?
Yeah, so I also want to say, Goldhirsh Foundation also makes grants. So we do some things that we've played, it's like a fellow with the Department of Transportation to work on transportation technology in the future. So sometimes we think about infrastructure and systems change from the Goldhirsh Foundation side of my brain. But with LA2050, we are trying to encourage and seed innovation. And we are trying to see that whether it's an old kind of institution that's trying to test something new. So I would say we gravitate more towards that, to the new ideas, or whether it's within a large organization, or whether it's a new bright idea and 2 people forming an organization. So I would say we do gravitate towards that, but we also have found, one group we just funded this last year is called Lost Angels out in Lancaster. They were looking for operational funds to train kids from the Boys and Girls Club to restore classic cars. It wasn't a novel idea that they were trying to pilot or test, but it was continuing their work. But we had never heard of this organization. And we thought, what a cool idea. So it's kind of this mix, but I would say veering more on the seeding different ideas.
And then we have one last question.
I can hear the stomachs grumbling.
I'll make it quick. My name is Brian, and I love the clarity of your answers. I know people that own restaurants, and money is a factor in every single what they're trying to do. And when I listen to you talk, Roy, your answers are how you can help the community, how it affects the community. So I'm wondering, what are your plans in terms of, I know you just opened a restaurant at Watts. What are your plans for the future? And in terms of actually the community too?
I have several different projects, but with local, our dream and our goal is that we have thousands of them throughout the world, and they're doing exactly what they're doing right now with just one or 2 restaurants. And so, if you dream that, think about, to package my answer. Imagine what I talked about with food trucks, right? The whole thing flipping from going from roach coach and dirty to gourmet and billion-dollar industry. I want to do the same thing with poverty in inner cities. Right now, we say food desert, welfare, Section 8 housing, poverty, inner city, all this stuff, right? We say all these things, right, as people. What I want is, in 5-10 years, that to be flipped, and those things no longer are talked about because the economy exists. So yeah, is that idealistic? Is it big? Yeah, but fuck, man, I saw it all happen in front of me with food trucks. They're called gourmet now, right? So no one says those old words anymore. And it no longer has those old meanings anymore. And that's what our dreams are for local. I think it can happen. I really do. It might take longer than the 4 years it took for food trucks because it's a bigger issue. But I think it can happen in 10 years. That's my goal. So I'll be there before 2050 for sure. Yeah, we'll be racing. I just want to know what you've been writing this whole time.
I'm about to tell you.
Oh, okay.
Tara, did you want to speak to that?
No, I think that was great. Can I just say, we do have our board member in residence here, right here. Okay,
We have
anyway,
a board member in
yes,
residence. Good to see you.
She's awesome, and she was totally instrumental in the last 2 years of My LA2050 Grants Challenge. Like, she read basically every application, and so this woman's a goddess, and a USC graduate student. So.
All right, so any USC folks, this is the person to talk to. But really, this has been a tremendous discussion and conversation. Tara Roth, Roy Choi, when I've listened to you, what strikes me is that you're tremendous social pioneers. You've taken ideas and really implemented them with the express design to break the cycle, to get different people in the mix and in the conversation. And I like the phrase you used, which is recognize your power, right? To say, people who don't think they have power actually do. And if you get them in the right position, they can really exercise that power and transform. Revolutions are what comes out of that. And that's tremendous. And so the other thing I think that you guys have undersold is your willingness to take risks and to put yourself out there. And that without risk, there's not reward to the same extent. And that if you fall down, you can get up again, particularly in a city like Los Angeles, where you got dreamers who fall every day, and they rise from the ashes and then do great things. So I've really enjoyed this, and I really do thank you for doing this. So that's going to be all for our conversation. I have a couple of announcements, and then there'll be time to say thank you, and then time for food. So first, the Bedrosian Center is having an event here, April 19th, where we're going to have the Holt Lecture. And the Holt Lecture is a lecture about the intersection of journalism, the media, and policy space, and governance. And so we've got Fred Ryan, who is the founding president of Politico, which is the leading political online news source, and the current publisher of the Washington Post. So this intersection of the print media and then the virtual media. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that the Bedrosian Center, for a while, has had a program called Policy at the Playhouse, where we actually go to theaters and then have discussions afterwards. There are a number of those events that are coming up in April. There are group rate discount tickets for students. And so I would say, go check out the Facebook page for Bedrosian, which is at facebook.com/Bedrosian Center, and go to some of the plays. I've been to a couple of them. They've been really good. And then the next to last order of business is fun, which is you all have wristbands. Those wristbands will get you a plate of food outside from one of the local trucks. So when you go outside, and you'll see them right out front. Get in line and get some eats. But before you go get some food, please join me in thanking our two wonderful guests. You guys have been wonderful.